Evening and welcome to Friday Night Magpie live on the eve as we chase our first away league win of the season at Tranmere. Fridays, for whatever reason, seem to be very busy days these days for Notts, don't we? Last week we had the bombshell that Alassane Jatta was not available for the weekend game. Martin Patterson, in his press briefing today, has confirmed that Alassane is available for selection tomorrow. He has been training this week, so that's the good news. Some things, though, tend to have been overshadowed a little bit by the overall content and context of what Martin had to say today in his presser. It certainly seemed a departure from previous weeks in which he's spoken about everybody knowing what the club needs. Clearly, that is referring to a centre forward, a number 9. No direct mentions of that today or of any other incomings. And I guess we've all been dissecting his briefing undertaken by Radio Nottingham. And I guess the gist, if we paraphrase, maybe I've got it wrong, but I've been looking at quite a few other people's thoughts, is that he's kind of paving the way for a very quiet transfer window between now and the 7 p.m. deadline on Monday. And also seemed to a couple of other, I thought, key points that came out of it. One was he used the word alignment with the owners, the football board, in terms of recruitment policy. I find that quite interesting because that's a word, alignment, that we've used on this show for probably 2 or 3 weeks and kind of asked the question, do we think everybody is aligned? Well, Martin Patterson clearly stated today that there is an alignment in transfer or incoming recruitment and policy. What do you make of that? What can he honestly say about that? It would be rather difficult, I suspect, for him to say that we're not aligned. And I think the other key thing that came out of the press briefing today was the focus on players who are returning from injury, bulking out the number of available players that he and Notts will have. Maya Traore was mentioned for one of the first times today. Lucas Ness, who came through under 21 game earlier this week. And I think the inference from that, if you like, I think was designed to kind of take the heat off the need for incoming players, given that we would have more players available. What are all your thoughts on Alassane Jatta being available and the recruitment model? Other topics to discuss on the show tonight. Several people have sort of sent me messages and saying, do you think the owners are fully committed to the club? My short answer is, I believe that they are, but it does appear there is a difference in financial approach, financial discipline, if you like, certainly when it comes to the football department compared to previous seasons. What are your thoughts? What do you make of that? We must also, sadly, one of Notts County's former managers has passed away. The family of Steve Thompson announced today that Steve had passed after a fight with cancer. All our condolences, our respects go to Steve's family, and we'll keep you updated on any funeral details a little bit nearer the time. On the subject of managers or head coaches, news this week that Stuart Maynard has joined York City as manager with his assistant. Wasn't going to be the Saunders brothers, was it? Yao Elves. So they've gone in at York, replacing Adam Hinshelwood, who was removed by York in a rather surprise announcement. And within the best part of 24 hours, Stuart was unveiled. And lest we forget. We are chasing our first away win of the season at Tranmere on Saturday afternoon. I shall be there, of course, and I know that many of our flock will be as well. Thanks, as always, to our official partners, JH Accountants and the Big Shed at the Trent Navigation. Let's dive into a bit of a quick mix of views from the flock on what you've been making of everything today. Royston says, from Martin's presser, I can only assume nothing in, nothing out. It's an interesting debating point, Royston. What is kind of more urgent, in or out? We do have a very large squad at this moment in time, indeed. Jurgen Halligan, he's raised a point that several of you have said. This has happened this afternoon. Frustrating when you see that Swindon sign Ollie Palmer. Good signing from Wrexham. There's no guarantees, is there? But he's about as good as it's going to get when it comes to scoring goals. Like-for-like replacement for Matt Smith, who is out for a fair while with a cruciate. I guess that absolutely is an example of aligned recruitment. Manager, owner, need a big centre forward to replace the one that's injured, and they've gone out and done, I'm sure it's not cheap, but on the face of it, a good piece of business that probably everyone at Swindon buys into. Leon Barber, what's your opinion of where we are with the owners? They appear to have lost interest and have not reinvested in the squad. Are they looking to sell? We'll debate that a little bit later in the programme, Leon. My view is no, they're not looking to sell, but I think it is very fair and to have some concerns in terms of the levels of financial expenditure we as a club on the football department are putting in, given that we have or did have the best part of an average crowd of 10,000 fans every week. Patterson clearly told to toe the party line and behave himself in interviews, says Leon Barber. Tim Watchon, my advice for Jatta, get out on the pitch and bang the goals in till January. That would bring in the big offers. Ian Cooksey, sounds like Martin has had a slap on the wrist and told to rein in his comments. Nigel Cameron, evening. It's time our football did the talking, starting tomorrow. Evening from Stuart Newton. Frustrating is the word. We've gone from interviews intimating reinforcements on the way to now we're just getting injured players back. Colin Metcalf, good evening, everyone. Evening, Colin. I have to say, I feel very deflated after Martin Patterson's comments today. First time in a long time, I'm just looking at 50 points as a target. I just can't get enthusiastic. A long season ahead, I fear. PJ Defiance, evening, PJ. Well, after today's presser, I'd say nobody is coming in. The brothers are willing to sell at the right price. Feel sorry for Martin Patterson. The club has failed in my eyes. Ian Cooksey concurs with Stephen Newton. I think he has been told to toe the line. And what a sad state of affairs. These are all people's opinions and interpretations of Martin's comments, it must be said today. Will Hart, is the new I'll get it right in a minute, Will. In this new management setup, you would surely expect Joe Palmer to be more visible, but unless it's about hospitality, he says nothing. The club needs to be more communicative. Yeah, I have mentioned this on a couple of times, previous shows, Will. My understanding, and I believe it to be correct, although Joe is chief executive, it's not the stereotypical chief executive role at many football clubs, where the chief executive is also responsible for the football department. The way the lines of demarcation are drawn at knots is that Joe, although chief executive, is primarily responsible for developing all revenue streams within the football club. So, for instance, football ticketing. Yes. Commercial revenue streams? Yes. Things to do with the stadium? Yes. Developments like training ground? Yes. But that demarcation line is drawn so that Roberto Gagliardi is responsible for football matters. Football on the pitch matters. So recruitment, players' contracts, playing budgets, that side of thing is all falls under the remit of Roberto on the football side. Joe is responsible for commercial revenue streams. So although it's chief executive, it's not quite what you would normally expect the remit of a chief executive to be. I hope that answers your point. And as such, Joe is then not really going to be in a great position, nor should he be, to talk about football development, recruitment, whatever else that we clearly have a lot of burning issues and questions for. Rob Simmons, I reckon the brothers targeted promotion last season as a now or never, and having failed, are resigned to cutting back their financial commitment. Royston, clubs all around us, this is a good point, are still strengthening their squads. Salford, MK, Colchester today. At least they're giving it a go. Mid-table, says Ian Cooksey, more like lower down. We're averaging 1 point per game, not a good sign. Colin Metcalf, the lack of communication doesn't help. Don't know if it's by design or if we were spoiled with how much the late Jason Turner did. Steve Geldard, my apologies. Steve, we're not signing anyone, I believe. The policy needs to change, he adds. Derek Flowers, last season gates were 10,000. We've not had that figure yet, and says it all really. Steve Geldard adds, how long before players like Ness and Robertson could be out again? We'll talk a bit about in terms of what happens now in the Football League with transfer windows and the need for cover, etc., a little bit later in the programme, and get your thoughts on that. Excuse me. Will Hart goes on. If Alessandro is available, then great. He will need to be at his best if he wants to get somewhere higher. So we should only benefit. Andy Eason. Excuse me. Not forgetting Richard Dryden, ex-Notts, played in the Warnock era and been an assistant a time or two in the coaching staff at Notts, who has taken the caretaker role at Yeovil following Mark Cooper's, dismissal. Richard Elvin, think the manager or head coach may have been told, we have enough players, get the best out of them. Steve Geldard again, it's a privilege to play professional football. All should give 100% for Notts. Paul, another one, not me. Crowds being down compared to last season, you can't really judge yet. Peak holiday season, and we have had home games where the opposition don't get big followings. It's a very good point, Paul, but the one thing I would say in terms of attendances, and I don't know whether those in the Pavis would have noticed it on Saturday, is it's not the number of people in the ground that is declared as the attendance. Used to be years ago, decades ago. Now it is the number of tickets sold for matches. So we've sold, broadly speaking, 6,500 season tickets. So let us say 6,000, I'm making this up, 6,400 season ticket holders, for whatever reason, didn't go to the game, and you're left with 100. We would still count 6,500. Clearly, it would be so polarized that you'd obviously see it. But the crowds are counted on the number of tickets sold, not necessarily the number of people here. So I thought, I was able to get out of the Pavis in under half an hour at the end of the game on Saturday, which is unheard of with a crowd over 9,000, and we were 8-8, weren't we? So yeah, just so you know, and sometimes you'll go, there can't be that many in the ground. There's nowhere near that. It's number of tickets sold, not the number of people who actually come through the turnstiles. Nathan Chambers. He's got a mad theory. I've not read it yet. I hope it's repeatable. Let's have a look. Mad theory. But what if we aren't backing Pato because we are working on Luke Williams to come back at the end of the season after Swansea finish paying him? Unlikely. Yes, mad theory. We'll agree on that one, Nathan. John Parr. Roberto is under real pressure getting players in and out by 7 p.m. Monday. Colin Metcalf, evening Colin, maybe an unpopular opinion with regards to Jatta, but with our record lately of selling players if a price is met, can anyone blame him for looking after himself first? I certainly wouldn't, Colin. You know, my partner in crime on the Monday evenings, you know, Mark Stallard, will give you the professional footballer's viewpoint. It is a career, it is a business. Loyalty or lack of it is a two-way street, and neither one side nor the other is worse. Yeah, it is a business. We view, you know, us as civilians, fans, we view it through a different prism to those people who earn their money in the professional football bubble. I'm not going to read Senga Schmidt's comment out for obvious reasons. Harry Riding, I see Lee Hughes' shirt behind you. It is. Get him on loan. Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you one thing I do, and I'm going off on a tangent here. You know, Lee Hughes is a goal scorer extraordinaire. And for me, he still has a lot to offer. And we always talk about striking and scoring goals being instinctive, you know. And I often think in the way that you have specialist goalkeeper coaches, you kind of have, you know, was it Liverpool had specialist throw-in takers? I mean, that was a great job to have, wasn't it? Crikey. And didn't we have someone who was specialist free kicks or something or other under, was it the first year or two in the National League, or was it towards the end of the Ray True era? Alex somebody? You know, for me, someone like Lee Hughes has a huge amount to offer coming in, doesn't need to be full-time. 1 or 2 mornings a week, 3 weeks, he has a job, but yeah, coaching strikers. The art of finishing, the art of scoring goals. He's a specialist art. When to time the run, when to go, how to clip the ball, side foot, lob it over the keeper, all of those sorts of things. And I do wonder, when you have someone who is clearly such a great proponent of the art of goal scoring, which is Lee Hughes, and there are others, why you might not get them in for a certain number of sessions a week to work just with your strikers. Might be additional training, you know, early in an afternoon after they've done the mainstream training. I always think, you know, people miss a bit of a trick. And we have so many analysts and data people. Do not set me off, right? But given the choice between employing, 14 data analysts studying the Bulgarian, Romanian, Cypriot, Kazakhstan, Chinese leagues for players, you know, counting how many shots and all the rest of it they have, why wouldn't you have someone with specialist football expertise helps you score goals? You know, it wouldn't cost you a lot. And I'm not just talking about Lee particularly. I'm using him as an example. What else have we got on the message boards? Now I've gone off at a tangent. Right, let's try and pick everybody up tonight. Chalky. People may forget that Jody signed a new 2-year deal last season before injury, coming off that amazing season. So I assume he's got a large raise. Maybe affects the budget as it only kicks in this summer. Any player's contract that gets signed, Chalky, would take immediate effect. So when we talk about extensions, it's not kind of like it gets tagged on the end of the contract. From that moment, if they were on X, they sign a new contract, it goes straight to Y. Yeah. So it's not like you stay on the same salary for 18 months and then get you more money. It would kick in straight away. Fine Leg takes an alternative view. Personally, I think we've got enough players to compete in this league. Buying additional does not guarantee anything. Donny Pie could be worse. We could support Manchester United. Hey, could be better. We could support Grimsby, I suppose. PJ Defiance, Hughes coaching strikers, Ian Richardson coaching defenders. Who for goalkeepers and midfield? Take your pick. Get Mark Stellard to do the coaching, says Pete Feenstra. He's too intelligent for that, Pete. Derek Flowers, don't we have a defensive coach, a midfield coach, and strikers coach? I'm not sure that's how the demarcation lines work. I think Martin Patterson takes overall coaching. Andy Flowers, not Andy Flowers. Excuse me, he coaches it. He used to coach England cricket, didn't he? Andy Edwards and Sam Slocum do the day-to-day coaching. And we have Steve Collis, who is the specialist goalkeeper coach. Believe that's how that works. Some clubs, says John Parr, do have striker coaches. Brighton and Hearts are two I know of. Yeah, John, I absolutely agree with you, and I'm aware there's quite a few. My point is there seems to be a huge push towards data and everything else at the moment. So clearly they don't come for free. Any budgets that you allocate there, for me, you could potentially look at reallocating some of those monies and giving kind of what I would call specialist football coaching expertise from people that have done it. Yeah, choosing my words carefully, not from people fresh out, freshly qualified graduates who've played football manager for 12 years of their lives, he says dismissively. Ian Cooksey, could next Saturday's game be called off? 2 players called up for their countries only, need one more. Yeah, I'm glad you've brought that one up, Ian, because I was going to have a chat about that. So the rules are you need 3, and those 3 need to have been actively involved in the first team squad. So if you get a Welsh under 15 that's never played for you in your academy, they don't count as one of the 3. So we've got 2. Kuyar called up, already out there. I think it's either tonight or tomorrow. Afghanistan are playing Iran. I think he's then got a game against Tajikistan. And off the top of my head, I think it's India. So Kuyar's gone out there. Jody Jones is in the squad for Malta. And I think most people thought Alassane Jatta would be called up for the Gambia World Cup qualifiers. They've already got a remote chance of qualifying. But at the moment, they still can. They need to win all their remaining 4 games. Alassane hasn't been called up into that squad. So at the minute, we're on 2, which is kind of your worst case scenario. So unless Fleetwood have got 3, or we get another one by, I think it's effectively close of play tomorrow, you have to apply for the postponement. The close of play for that application, I believe, is Sunday evening. So if the worst case scenario, we had another player called up on Monday or Tuesday next week, let's say Gambia get a load of injuries and they want to call Alassane up on Monday or Tuesday, as I understand it, unless the rules have changed, we are stuffed, because you can't call it off less than that, after that Sunday deadline. There was a club last year that got caught out, might have been Exeter, really unfortunate with it. So as it stands, the game takes place unless there is another player called up into an international squad for Notts that's involved in the first team squad. There has been some debate as to whether Tyrese Hall would make it into the Jamaica squad. Then that game would take place unless, and I'm not aware that they have got 3 internationals, unless the same principle applies to Fleetwood, in which case the game would be off. I think quite a lot of people, I think possibly people at the club themselves, thought this game might be off. But obviously with Alassane's back spasm, the fact he's had a 5-game suspension, the Gambian coach has taken a view not to call him up for this one. Ian Cooks is just kind of corroborating some of that. Tyrese Hall is in the 44 man, so that's like an extra large provisional Jamaica squad. They're waiting for that cut to be announced. Now, whether that's tomorrow or whatever. So, as I understand it, were Tyrese to be included in that squad, then the game, I would assume, unless not for some reason definitely wanted on, the game would seek a postponement, which would be granted by the EFL. That's on the basis that Tyrese has featured in first team action in the last few games. Excuse me. Tim Watchorn, what evidence is there that the medical men that we brought in are making any difference? I'm not even sure if he's here yet. I've not come. I assume the gentleman concerned is he was at Washington DC United in Major League Soccer, but I've not seen anything as such yet. Ian McQuillan, have we got a ball boy coach? I think the allegory there is when to throw the ball in and when not to throw the ball in, as to how quickly you do it. Fabio Capello used to run coaching classes for ball boys at Wembley games of how to throw it in and how not to throw it in, depending on the state of the game. True story. True story. I want it postponed next Saturday, says Derek Flowers, as we were going to North Wales next Friday for 2 weeks. Okay, right. That's caught us up to speed with the message boards. Let's sort of take a bit more of a deep dive, and I welcome your input because, as you know, I can talk a bit, but it is nice to be able to break off and read some of your thoughts. So, Alessandro Jatta. So today, Martin confirmed that he had trained this week. I think he'd used phrases like, a little bit careful with him, not to push it too hard, too quick. But he used the phrase available for selection. So who starts him? Who starts him tomorrow? Ian Dennis has got Ian Dennis. He's the BBC radio commentator. Matt Dennis has got 4 goals in a week, top scorer in League Two. Personally, I don't think Jatta can displace him straight away. So my gut feel for this would be that Jatta would be on the bench. Dennis starts, and then you kind of get round to that hour mark, see how things are going. Maybe if you need a goal or you're losing, you bring them both on. Or would some of you start Jatta and leave Dennis out? Bit of a ruthless decision, that one. Or would you start them both? Would you start them both? Have Jatta with Dennis slightly off him? And here's one for you. When they are both fully fit, does that then free you up to move Jody Jones wide left? Thoughts, everybody? Let's see what we've got coming in on the boards while you digest those tactical thoughts. Andy Easom, as far as I've seen regards Jamaica, they've already trimmed the original squad and Tyrese isn't in it. So there you go. So it's looking less likely unless someone else gets a call up. Jurgen Halligan, Jatta to come off the bench for me. That I think would be favourite. PJ Defiance, Jones wide left definitely. As it stands, he won't be anywhere next Saturday against Fleetwood other than with Malta. Agree with Jurgen, says Rob Simmons. Jatta stay on the bench and presumably come on second half. And I think that would be a fairly... does anyone disagree with that? Would you start Jatta? Would you play both of them together straight away? That's probably a decision to be made a little bit further down the line when Alessandro is match fit. Okay, that's that one done. Transfer window. It's Monday, 7 o'clock. We've got a show at 7, me and Stel. So that could be pretty raw or lively or however you want to interpret it, what may or may not happen over the next 72 hours. There was a clear departure with Martin's comments today. Clear departure. Before I go on that, let me just read a few more points. Donny Pie, I go for a 4-4-2. Play Dennis and Jatta up top and go for it. And I suspect that would have a fair amount of traction with Notts fans. However, let's and I, we're civilians and we're all playing Football Manager ourselves now. I would not be averse to experimenting with that. I don't see it happening, if I'm honest with you. What position does Jody play for Malta, says Sam Metcalf. Colin Metcalf, I don't know if they're any relation. I would start Dennis and Jatta with Jarvis. I would start Dennis and Jatta with Jarvis on the bench. Change of formation with 4-4-2. I think we would be far more dangerous. Andy Eason, still think if either Dennis or AJ get an injury, with no news on Luca either, several weeks out, by the way, we will be up the creek without a paddle. PJ Defiance, Jatta on the bench to come on in the second half for Dennis after his hat-trick. Was only one short last week, wasn't he? Then Jatta gets a hat-trick too. And PJ, we all woke up together with PJ, or we've all drunk about 8 pints with PJ. Start both 4-4-2, says Senga Schmidt. Steve Geldar, Dennis stays. What message does it send the way he is playing well? And I'm assuming there, Steve is saying there is not a case for Mr. Dennis to not be starting. I would agree with that. Will Hart, I will play both AJ and Dennis and JJ on the left. We need something different. Steve Goddard adds, when fit, attack with Dennis and Jones out wide. Okay, so that's kind of the specifics around Alessandro. Generic discussion now, please. Thoughts and comments regards recruitment policy. So Martin Patterson has come out today. Alignment. Last week, I think the phrase that he'd clearly been briefed on was to say that Alessandro had reported a back spasm, and we had to respect that. I think alignment, unquestionably, were one of the key messages that he will have been briefed on today. Certainly got mentioned quite a few times. So, and I think the rationale behind that is clearly to demonstrate a united front from Martin, the technical board, Roberto Gagliardi, and the owners. I think it's very, very difficult, very, very difficult for Martin. He's a rock and a hard place. He's a new head coach. He's won one in the first 5. He's been robbed of the services of the inverted commas, and I used this before, Matt Dennis has scored 4 goals in a week, robbed of the services of a star striker for the first 6 games. He clearly can't rock the boat. I think if we'd won 4 games, then I think you might have seen a slightly different tack, but he's not in that position. So he's not going to rock the boat. I'll put this one out there to you. The inference, or what Martin seems to be suggesting today, is very little transfer activity in and out, total alignment, and that there are other players becoming available after injury. And I think one of the phrases he used, it would bulk out the squad. And he specifically mentioned Mia Traore. I take that as people above him kind of saying, you have got a lot of players, get on with what you've got. There was certainly nothing from Martin today in which he mentioned the need for another striker, a number 9. Yet that is something he has consistently beaten a drum on for weeks, if not months. So I think there's clearly a reason why that's not being mentioned. And I don't think it's just because Jatta is now on the face of it staying, and I think that he will stay. You've currently then only got 2 number 9s, and either one of those gets injured, you are back to exactly the same position we have been in for the first 5 games of the season. And so far in their careers, neither Alessandro nor Matt Dennis have been 40-game a season merchants regularly. So let's see. So we talk about players coming back. So personally, and I don't know what everybody else thinks, I would have, as an individual and as a fan, great news that Alassanya's staying. Brilliant news. Brilliant news. I'd still want another striker, one centre forward. I'd want another centre half because I think we are very exposed in terms of injury to Matty Platt. We're not sure how the betting potential suspension from the FA plays out for Lewis Macari. And I'd also have a goalkeeper. And that's irrespective of whatever your views are on Kel Roos. The reality is if Kel gets an injury, our only other goalkeeping option is a young lad from Forest that's not played 1 minute of senior EFL football. And I think that's a massive risk in League Two, a massive risk. So if it's me, I'd be wanting at least 3. And I think it's interesting that those 3 are all down the spine of the team, aren't they? All down that middle bit. And normally you have a strong spine and you infill down the sides. We seem to have done, and if someone says to me, Paul, you don't need another striker, right? You don't need another centre half because we've got Lucas Ness coming in. We don't need another goalkeeper because we've got 2. My question to you, why do we have 3 and in some cases 4 options for wing backs? Anyone want to answer that for me? Put it in the message board. For me, you need more cover at centre forward, centre half, and goalkeeper than you do at wing backs. And for me, I think the squad, it's a purely personal view, is very unbalanced. Because as of 7 o'clock on Monday evening, we can't sign anyone other than free agents through until January the 1st. That's a lot of games. We've already seen how much it has cost us potentially without one centre forward this season being suspended for 5 games and not fundamentally addressing that issue. And that's not just me saying that, that's the manager saying that, or he's been saying that up until today every week for 2 months. So that would make me concerned, but it would appear, Martin's got his paymasters. They've kind of explained the position to him, and he's explaining the position to us. Might be interesting to have a conversation with Roberto Gagliardi, explaining the position in Roberto's own words without the conduit of Martin Patterson. But we will wait and see to see if anything is kind of enunciated on after 7 o'clock on Monday. Right, what else have we got? Right, let's try and read everybody's out tonight. Derek Flowers, formation, team, all depends on which team Pato is told to play. Ian Cooksey, just a little anniversary to cheer us up, Paul. It's 50 years tomorrow, right? I'll be 12. I know what you're going to say. Since Les Brad's 89th minute winner at the City Ground, heady days. And you know what? The interesting thing that year, both in League, the second division, and our younger fans will not believe me, go and look it up. Average attendances, they were about 200 apart. Notts were like 11,500. Forest were about 11,800. So, and then unfortunately, a certain guy called Brian Clough came along. Actually, that might have been a bit later. That might have been about 76. That might have been about 76, 77. Andy Eason, I felt that Martin was told to mention the fact that Traore is almost available, and he'll be the option if needed. Um, yeah, I got the same impression, Andy. It gets back to alignment, doesn't it? Um, I'm not sure there's a great deal. I don't see how there could be a great deal of alignment when several of these players were signed while we didn't have a head coach. So you can talk about alignment all you like, but how important is alignment to the football club when signings are made without even having a head coach in situ for 8 weeks after Stuart Maynard left? If alignment was so important, you would have appointed a head coach far sooner so that he could have had some semblance of an input into your recruitment. But, that's the way it is. Donny Pie, how times have changed. Did Clough, Revie, Ferguson, and others ever get aligned? Question mark. Look, yeah, this is where look, and I agree with everything you say, Donny Pie. That era of those kind of managers wielding that influence is much rarer. Not dead, not dead. Not's made a there was analogies drawn with Everton, weren't there, about the technical board when Notts announced it. And then I noticed 2 or 3 weeks later, David Moyes, who's a quality manager, he's autocratic and he's earned the right to be autocratic, started talking about how they were a long way off any form of recruitment. And then about a week later, they get Jack Grealish, and Jack Grealish comes out and talks about how the moment he spoke to David Moyes, sold on the club, etc., etc. That is the influence, alignment, authority, call it what you want, of a proper manager. Even though there's a technical board, what was Clough's all-time one? Well, he had many great quotes. We agreed to sit round a table. We all discuss the issue, and then we agree I was right. And look, great Cloughism, but tells kind of exactly all you need to know about those kinds of people. And before people say, well, they can get signings wrong, absolutely. Clough got loads wrong, but you judge it overall. No one gets everything right all the time. You try and get the balance of things right, don't you? What else have we got? Colin Metcalf, nailing my colours to the mast. I can't stand statistics, not a fan of the review committee, and very unimpressed with recruitment and the way we do it. I'll still support my team. Look, we all support our team. I'm hearing one or two people at the minute talking about, I'm not going here because I'm fed up with this, fed up with that. Look, always remember, the club is what we support. The club has officers, that make decisions for the club. But don't allow your affection or your support for the club to be destroyed, impinged upon because of the actions of some of its officers at any one time. Hard, I know, but we support the club. We support the club. Difficult to imagine a Notts County squad without a number 9, says Stephen Newton. Probably got memories of Astle, Lawton. Crikey, yeah, we've had a few famous number 9s down the years. Steve Geldard, the squad is too big. Need to sell before we get the players in for the positions we need. Poor recruitment by ? I'll tell you one thing that I think could work in Notts' favour in the next 72 hours. And it's not forced to be 72 hours. Stuart Maynard's gone to York. They're a decent sized National League club with realistic aspirations and ambitions to get back into the Football League. So you would imagine there's a bit of budget for Stuart there. Head coaches tend to deal with players they know. Now, I'm wondering if Stuart comes in for some of kind of those Notts fringe players. Got an awful lot in midfield that aren't seeing a lot of game time at the minute. People like a Curtis Edwards, Hinchy, those types. I wonder whether Stewart wants to take one or two of those on loan. The situation with the National League is that you can still do loans after the window, so he doesn't have to do it by Monday. But I do wonder if one or two Notts players may find their way going to York, for those players that do not attract interest from other EFL clubs. The recruitment system has to go, says Stephen Geldard. I don't think it's going anywhere, Steve, at the minute. Is Slocum registered to play, says Richard Elvin? I do not know. The only thing would be if I think this is right, both Kell and Griffiths were both injured. Notts can apply for an emergency loan. So I think you can then, under those circumstances, it's the only position you're allowed to. I think you can get an emergency loan keeper in that situation, I believe. Nathan Chambers, wing backs are covering more mileage in today's game and tend to be rotated more. I think it's a modern day thing, but I agree with you, Paul. The spine is key. I'd wager, Nathan, I don't think too many players, if any, have run more than a certain Mr. Dennis. I would doubt it. And he's played, because we haven't got another number 9, he's played virtually every minute of all the games. Traore has so far shown nothing as a 9 or as a 10. Suspect if he does make it, he'd do so as a 10. So we are still so stupidly thin up top. On the goalkeeper situation, I don't think we have one player up to the level required. PJ Defiance, what happens if Jatta loses his head again and gets a red and another 5-game ban? Well, you'd like to think he wouldn't. If he did, you'd be looking at big fines. Ian Cooksey, my view is that the squad is top heavy in certain positions. I would agree with you, Ian. The recruitment is strange. Bennett's had a good 45 minutes against Cardiff in a friendly, and he gets signed. Where was the data for that? ZO, something I mentioned a little bit earlier, spine of the team is not good enough. Also, has to be a concern that we lack leaders on the pitch. For me, Palmer is a lightweight captain. Don't think the coach and Gagliardi are on the same page, says Steve Geldard. Ian Cooksey, one thing about Moyes who he has over Pato is management experience and would know how to handle the situation. Look, the reality, Ian, for me, pound for pound, when you look at what David Moyes has achieved, winning games, promotions, I doubt there's more than 3 or 4 managers in this country right now with a better track record than him. On a slot, absolutely brilliant. One season. When he's done 10 seasons in the Prem, then you can kind of compare. For me, Moyes has just done it year after year after year, and I suspect he pays very little more than lip service to their technical board, if I'm honest with you. Or at least, let's put it this way, is used to having the final say. And I think if there's anything we can surmise from our technical board and our recruitment processes, I'm not saying this is right or wrong, this is only an opinion. I don't think Martin Patterson has the casting vote or the deciding vote. Donny Pie, we should support the shirt first, then the wearer. Whatever happens, I will support Martin Patterson and his team regardless, win, lose, or draw. Will Hart, can we discuss the positives before we finish tonight? I'm depressed. Nathan Chambers, I agree, Paul. Dennis has covered more ground than anybody else, was a key attribute of Mr. Lee Hughes. Right, okay, so let us talk some positives. Right, so then, not to put you on the spot, Will Hart, you want to discuss positives. I'll try and think of a few. I'll talk through them now, and I want you then to fire off on this message board with your little mitts the positives that you've seen so far this season. Okay, here's my first positive. My first positive, 4 points out of 6 from our last 2 home games. Now, after them defeats we'd had, and after the manner that we lost to Barrow, for those of us who were up there, 6.5 hours going, 5 hours coming back, I promise you, 50 points was wildly overmisted come the end of the season. So there was clearly a huge amount of pressure on us, as there was on Shrewsbury. So it doesn't matter about Shrewsbury. Oh, they're not very good. You have to win, and we hadn't won. We got 3 points. Bromley, first half as good as anything this season, on a par with Newport, the opening 45 minutes. For me, Bromley were much better in the second half. Take on board Mark Stallard's point that he didn't think it was about fitness second half, thought it was more about mentality. We're hanging on, Bromley are bombing on. I'm glad was it 4 minutes stoppage time? If there'd been 8 or 9, which sometimes there are with referees, I'm not sure we would have hung on. So one positive, they only stuck the board up that says 3 or 4 minutes. Any longer, we could have been in trouble. And I do think 4 points from 2 home games is absolutely fine, particularly when you've had, and let's not sugarcoat it, a bad start to the season. Positives, Jatta. It would appear, unless there is a massive sea change, that Alassania has recovered from his back spasm. He's trained this week and is available for selection, to repeat the words of Martin Patterson, tomorrow. And as such, he and Dennis will be available to score as goals, certainly up until January in the case of Jatta, before the transfer window comes in. Right, Will Hart. Yeah, there we go. What you got, Will? Dennis has been my highlight so far. Yes, I agree. Jody is looking hungry. We have been able to make substitutes that look positive. Palmer's free kicks and corners have been great so far this season. Some of that I would agree with Will. I might just sort of say some of the others is open to debate, but no, let's try. Let's be positive. Andy Eason, I feel the return, yes. The return of Nick Cerula is a plus. Martin H, a positive. We have the league's top scorer. Positive, similar likewise, Cerula coming back, says Rob Simmons. Graham says, I understand the negativity about the management recruitment system, but maybe we need to remember how well it has worked in the last 6 years. We've improved our league position every year since 2020. Now I'm going to try and bite my knuckles here, Graham. Defeatist attitude. One promotion in 6 years. I hardly even call it a promotion out of the National League. 16 million quid, average crowds anywhere between 8 and 10,000, and football progression is not linear. Okay, you either get promoted or you don't, whether you finish 5th, 10th, 14th, 19th. Okay. Honestly, everyone's entitled to a view. I just do not buy that. For me, is totally defeatist. We are currently operating at the lowest level in professional football that this club has ever operated at, other than a 4-year loan to the National League. Let's just remember that. So I don't get all this. Just be grateful we've got a club. I really struggle with it, and it may be a generational thing. I really struggle with it. I really do. It's a good job that when Don Masson arrived with Bob Worthington in 1968-69, Notts County were 90th in the Football League. They'd had 10 years of unmitigated failure. Don came, Jimmy Cyril came a few months after that, and it's a good job all of those guys, Les Brad, Charlie Crickmore, Billy Brindley, Brian Stubbs, Dave Needham, Tony Haitley, Keith Oakes, Barry Watling, Roy Brown. It's a good job they didn't have that defeatist attitude. Yeah, we should be ambitious. We have got one of the two highest or second highest crowds in this division, and we have done for the last 2 years. So to somehow say, 14th after we tailed away, 6th, but was in the National League a few years ago, so you can't expect anything. Defeatist, completely lacking in any semblance of ambition. And by, I think, up until a few weeks ago, universal acclaim, we've got great owners that run this club very, very well. You've got great owners that give a great base to succeed. How can you explain away one promotion in 6 seasons out the National League at a cost of 16 million quid? Sorry, that's my views. They will not change, I promise you. Let's get out of this goddamn division. All right, let's get out of this goddamn division. Rant over. Anything else? The positives are that we have looked better over the last 2 games, says Steve Geldard. Some additions to the squad seem to be bigger and stronger, more physical, and still with some skill, says Marcus Darnwind. Ian Cooksey, positive, there are worse teams than us. Negative, there are a lot more that are better. Richard Elvian mentions Cerula. I really do not want to read this one. PJ, yeah, I know you're being clever, but the positive is that no former player has scored against us, ... yet. Tranmere, Charlie Whittaker tomorrow, right? Kiss of bloody death, that one is. If Charlie Whittaker scores tomorrow, PJ, you come on the show on Monday and you apologise to everyone. Jurgen Halligan, positives for me, apart from Dennis, is Iapenda and Norburn getting better each game. Yes. Ian Cooksey, he's of a vintage similar to me. Bloody brilliant. Paul sums it up more than anybody I've heard. It's just that we're very long in the tooth, Ian, right? Okay. I, at 18, went to see us beat Forest at the City Ground, okay? I saw us win at Aston Villa on the opening day of the season, which is the equivalent of not going to Liverpool this year in the Premier League and beating Liverpool on their own patch, right? That is where we need to aspire, okay? You have to aim high. You have to be ambitious. And there's no point having great owners if all we're ever going to do is tootle around in the bottom division of English football. The owners have done a great job to this point. But I don't think 16 million quid for one promotion out of the National League is necessarily a fantastic return for them. The reality is, to get to League One, they're going to have to spend more. And we ain't going to do it by breaking even in 1 year. Bradford didn't. Mansfield never have. Chesterfield look a good bet this year. And think of all those people that said we weren't ready to go up last year. We wouldn't have had a side good enough. Defeatist tripe, okay? Bradford and Doncaster, who were the margins between them and us, boiled down to them having a better recruitment in January than we did. What have they done? They've gone out and bought better players once they've been promoted. And here's a thought for you. If we'd gone up, we'd have re-signed David McGoldrick because we could have afforded to pay him more money with extra revenues from Division 1. And here's another one for you. We probably would have kept George Abbott because no championship club came in. So all this, I'm not happy, we 14th to 8th to 7th to 5th, we're gradually improving. What that means is you lose your best players. If we got promoted in the first year of coming back into the league, we would have kept Macaulay Langstaff. It's no different to when Neil Warnock was here and we had people like Draper and Johnson, right? They graduated with the club. And that could have happened with McGoldrick and Abbott and Bass had we gone up, supplemented by other players. It's very, very, very difficult to break even, to not speculate, to climb the footballing ladder. very, very, very difficult. And so I do find it a little difficult at the minute to fully comprehend the brothers, if you like, financial constraints that are being put on. And nothing will, I'm sorry, if it's 300, whatever it is for Bass, I really struggle to see how that helps club sustainability and how that helps the club get promoted. Honestly, I don't see the sustainability argument, and I don't see the footballing argument. I really don't. I really don't. But these are all individual appointments. Right, hang on. Another rant over. What else have we got on the message boards? PJ Defiance. Yes. Sorry, I will do. So just remember, we all have to have a dig out PJ Defiance if Whittaker scores tomorrow. Colin Metcalf. I was born in 1964. 100% agree, Paul. There are winners and losers and nothing in between. I'll tell you what, that's a great way of me having rambled on for half an hour, but you putting it very succinctly. Absolutely. Winners and losers. Yeah. No in between. Ian Cooksey, 100% agree. Who adds, it's 34 years ago today, that win at Villa. And when I speak with him, Aston Villa captain of the day was Alan Evans, and I got to know Alan when I was at Leicester. And whenever I see him or talk to him, every single time I bring it up, that game. So you were parading that trophy before kick-off, you went down the tunnel with your tail between your legs, and he laughs and he says, yeah, stupid idea, whoever told us to parade the trophy, he said. Adrian Druitt, fully agree, 100% agree. Paul, if only we'd done better in that January transfer window. What else have we got? Hang on, the eyes are going. Martin H. I thought we were going to end positively. We are positively. I should be there at Tranmere. We could lose the next 15, 20 games. I will still be there, right? And loads of other Notts fans will be. Will Hart, Great Magpie Circle tonight. Technically, it's a Friday night Magpie live, Will, but we won't split hairs. Love the more weekly shows and the Matchday podcast. Thank you. No, my pleasure. Got a bit of time to do it, so I will carry on doing it. Steve Goldard, enjoying the show. Oh, sorry, double trouble for PJ. Michael Fido adds, don't forget Christian Dennis. So either Dennis or Whittaker, you're for the high jump, PJ. Ian McQuillan, 100% spot on, mate. Right, so on a positive note, let's all get up to the Wirral. What's the pub we all go in? I don't really drink before a game. Is it the Mersey Clipper or something like that we all go in? That's very sociable. It's always very nice. I like going to Tranmere, to be fair. We all sit in there, don't we, Notts fans, before kick-off, and then walk round behind one end and then go into that sort of bottom corner. Well, I'm always reminded of some of the, shall we say, primitive type of food bars and toilets in that bottom corner when we go in. Anyway, I've rambled on. I think I've done an hour, which is plenty. I'm going for a lie down now. Thank you, one and all. Apologies for the rants here and there. Transfer deadline. Yes, I don't know whether it's going to be busy or not. Who knows? Maybe not sort of dampened down our enthusiasm to the point we're not expecting anything. So suddenly we'll become pleasantly surprised on Monday. Let's see. We'll be doing a vlog from Tranmere tomorrow, so that'll be posted 6:30, whatever time my lad edits it all after I've warbled on. Come and say hello if you want to go on the vodcast as well. We can have a quick chat. Andy Easom, well, us Brits love the weather. They've got the weather update. Andy Easom says the weather forecast on the Wirral is to tip it down. Glad it's not an open end. Yes, we're undercover. Cheers, Paul. Great show, says Stephen Newton. Thanks as always to our official partners. I forgot them at the start of the show. JH Accountants, and also to the Big Shed at the Trent Navigation for all of their support. If you've liked it and you don't subscribe, please please subscribe. What it does fundamentally mean is that then when I can send you messages directly to you about when the show is, if there's a change of date. I know sometimes some of us get caught out or there's late changes. When you're a subscriber, you automatically then get alerts 30 minutes before the show starts, and if things have changed, I'm starting to send a few more messages out. So don't worry about being bombarded and having to pay this. Everything's free on this channel, but it does mean you automatically get updates on timings and things like that, which can help you all out if you miss the messages on social media. Thank you very much indeed. Look forward to seeing you all at Tranmere. Vlog tomorrow after the game, and we'll be back 7 o'clock when we can talk about a new number 9, a new goalkeeper, new centre half, and anybody else that you want into the ranks. Cheers for now. Thank you all. See you soon. Bye bye.